and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Andy Lane. Who's going to be interviewed apparently by me and Mike.
Yes. You're very important, actually, because normally I don't have anybody interviewing me. So, shall we tell the lovely people the last time we met? Bye-bye.
See you later. No, I've got to stay here if that's okay. So sweet.
Can everybody hear us, by the way? Yeah. Okay, fine.
Sorry, Mike, you were saying?
I was saying, when did we last meet?
It was in Kent about a year ago, wasn't it, the convention?
Oh, that's right, yes. Redemption. And we had fun then, and we're going to have fun this weekend as well. You should see him on the dance floor. Oh dear, but that's not what they want to hear, really. They want to hear about you, and how you came to be the famous person you are.
Famous is stretching it a little bit. For the people that maybe aren't quite sure who I am or what I do, I'm a writer. I've written 10 or 11 books, some fiction, Doctor Who, some non-fiction, Randall Hopgood deceased, Austin Powers, Babylon 5, James Bond, and one television script for a short-lived and very well received science fiction series called Space Island 1, which is currently being repeated on Sky 1 at that one o'clock.
I'm right in saying, am I not, that this was a series made on the Isle of Man?
That's correct. Yes.
And my mate, Angus.
Angus from Star Wars.
Absolutely. And we killed each other in Forced Empty Road.
Right.
But, yes, it never went to a second series then, did it?
They made, I think, 22 episodes.
Right.
So I'm not sure whether it just continues to run to 22 or there were 2 blocks of 11. It was made with money from the European Union, the European Film Commission or something. It was filmed on the Isle of Man because they got some bizarre tax break into it.
Well, they will give you a third, I think, of your budget.
Yes.
Provided it is spent on the Isle of Man, which of course if you don't put up a whole unit and feed them, then it is. I mean, you spend it anyway. Oh, look at that.
It was an interesting little series. It was set about 10, 15 years in the future on a space station orbiting the Earth. No aliens, no laser beams, nothing bizarre. It was just about what it was like to have a small group of people stuck in a tin can, run by some officious bureaucracy somewhere else. Interesting little series. I wrote an episode with a visiting scientist who brought with him a little intelligent computer which started to take over the station. And I called the scientist Professor Jarvis, and they cast Martin Jarvis in the part. Which is, of all the people they could cast, somebody with the same name. I changed the name. They said, no, we'll keep it as Jarvis. I still have this suspicion the only reason that Martin Jarvis agreed to do it was because he got the script and thought, well, they can name the part after me.
Your turn.
Oh, my turn. So what got you into writing these books? Because that's not your actual legal profession, is it?
No, I actually work for the Ministry of Defence, bizarrely. That's what pays the mortgage. No, I started about 17 or 18 years ago. Somebody that I knew through Doctor Who fandom bought Starburst magazine and didn't quite know what to do with it, didn't have any writers. So we were in the pub one night and said, do you want to do some film reviews? Yes, I can do that. So I started doing film reviews and book reviews for them. And ever since then, it's just things have come along with people that you know, people that you talk to. I picked up doing the Doctor Who books because Virgin had got a license from the BBC to do them. And a couple of people that I knew started writing them, and I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So I sent a proposal into Virgin, and they said, yeah, okay, we'll trust you, we'll give you money to do that. So I started a relationship with Virgin doing the Doctor Who books, then started doing non-fiction books for them, Babylon 5, James Bond, and then moved across the Box Tree and started doing stuff for them. So it's just been a progression of one thing after another, knowing people.
What? I'm just going to ask that. I mean, I always, as you will no doubt note, or have noted, I don't actually like one guy interviewing another guy and you lot just sitting there and listening. Because 9 times out of 10, we may be talking about something you know nothing about or aren't interested in. So I'd like to, if it's all right with you, to throw it open and have a Q&A session.
I'll kick it off with you, then. You've done a lot of like the television tie-in books, Randall Hopkirk, Austin Powers and that. How much support when writing do you get from the companies, or is it, please write this but we're telling you nothing?
The books actually fall into two camps. The Babylon 5 book, the two books that I did, were completely unofficial and unauthorised, so we didn't have a licence from the people making Babylon 5. In fact, they kind of disapproved of what we were doing. But the advantage with doing the books that way is you can actually write what you want. You can be completely honest about the series, and you can tell the truth. And certainly in the second of those two Babylon 5 books, I went a lot into what was going on behind the scenes of the series and why it was falling apart and why the later episodes were so cheap. And now I think the TV company disapproved of that and didn't want us to do it. Having said that, I sent the manuscript of the first Babylon 5 book to Joe Straczynski in America, and unofficially he gave us a lot of help on that. He read through the manuscript, he commented on it, he answered questions. So he was actually very supportive of the book. Of course, by the time it came to doing the second book, when we were being quite nasty about the series, he withdrew a lot of support, and he actually threatened legal action and tried to get the book suppressed, which was a dreadful one. But the Randall Hopkirk Deceased book, the two books that I've done, were actually authorised by the people that make the TV series, and they gave us a lot of help. They allowed us to interview the cast and crew and everything. The disadvantage being you've got to be quite supportive and nice about the series, you can't be nasty about it, so it can go either way.
Is it, you're talking about the new series, yeah?
Yes, the Degrees of Bottom.
Is it still the same company that made the original series?
No, ITC made the original back in the 60s.
I was in that. No, not the 60s.
Sorry, you're up into the 70s, wasn't it?
But it was one of my first tellies. No, I was in there and I said, so who makes it now?
A company called Working Title, who bought the rights to
Oh,
all
yes.
of the ITC series apart from the Saint and Crusaders.
Jeff?
Well, can I just keep on with the technical questions now? You did mention doing unofficial books, obviously. What's sort of the legal copyright position on that? I'm a bit hazy on this subject.
It's a tricky one. You can write a book about anything without being legally threatened, but if you try and trade on the name of the original, then you've got problems. So you can't do we couldn't call it the Babylon 5 book, because you're actually using the copyright name in the title. We had to call it the Babylon File and hope people would actually know what we were doing. You can't use images from it or anything. But so long as it's a factual book, and you're not fictionalising anything, you're legally allowed to do it. So I've done the Babylon 5 books, I've done a James Bond book, and there are no problems.
Well, that's interesting because when I wrote Yes, Admiral, I wrote to George, who had been very, very helpful on the first one. Yes, Mr. Bronson, he gave me permission to put a still from Star Wars in. But when I came to do the second one, they were up to their ears and beyond in that dreadful movie, Phantom Menace. And I had a very strict letter back from one of his more than my job's worth underlings, saying, you may say you were in the movie, I thought, thanks very much, but you may not call it Admiral Fossil. And it went on and on and on. And you mustn't disclose this, you mustn't say that. And I thought, oh, this. And so I wrote back and I said, look, I was only on the movie for just under a month. You can't expect me to be able to fill a whole book on Star Wars. Because that was the other thing. The main content of your book must not be Star Wars. So would they have been able to get me legally?
I think it would have been tricky for them to have done it, but then again, they can afford an awful lot of lawyers to stay out for a long time. So there are some companies who try not to do it. The people who do Star Trek tend to try and take legal action if they can, so it's best to stay away from them. But Babylon 5 people were quite reasonable. Do you say you have another question?
Well, not so much. I'm not really familiar with your work. There is one piece of yours I know in its entirety. It's an award-winning piece. The 8-letter short story of Mexican Farm.
Yes. Oh yeah, there's the 8-word short story. can't even remember what the story was now.
I think this has been accurate, but I think I can actually remember. It was the ultimate postmodern science fiction story. Elvis calling Mars, Kennedy dead, I'm coming home.
That was it, yes. Any other questions around writing?
Yeah.
I'm hoping getting this right. When you wrote the first Doctor Who book, that was Lucifer Rising with Jim Mortimer?
With Jim Mortimer, yes.
Well, what got you into doing that, and why did you do it as a joint book as opposed to one by yourself?
That's a good question. Partly it was fear. I think it was the fear of actually, could I write a 90,000 word book by myself? If you're writing with somebody else, then you've got a safety net. You can always say, okay, I can't do any more, you take over for a while. And also, it was just happened to be the circumstances. We'd been in the pub one night, we were talking about doing the Doctor Who book, we came up with a plot between us. So, you know, if he hadn't been there, maybe I would have come up with a plot by myself. But I found it a good experience writing a book with someone else. You can get ideas coming in from different directions that wouldn't have occurred to you. I think it gives you a much richer experience when you're writing it. Because we did almost kill each other halfway through, because he wanted to do so. He's got a particular writing style. He does things with characters that I would have disagreed with. And yeah, we did almost come to blows.
He's rather a big man too, isn't he?
He is.
To come to blows with, I mean.
Is it not true that you're working on a project with Jim?
Yeah. Well, it's First Frontier. And as I've said many times, I read this first draft of the script, First Frontier, and it's the best first draft I have ever read. And I shall say tomorrow in my panel, just all keep your fingers crossed, because to get an independent production off the ground is a hemorrhage.
What's the status of it at the moment? Is it
Well, it was, yeah. I mean, as far as I know, I haven't spoken to the producer for about 3 weeks, but there were 3 partners, 2 I'd never heard of, so I can't tell you who they were, but the third one was Channel 4 Films, as opposed to Film 4. I think there's a difference there anyway.
Yes.
And they were very, very keen on the idea. They were about to sign, and then they went bust. So it's the 2 that are left are going to try and pull it off on their own. But Claudia's still up for it, and that's why I'm doing it. No, it's not. She's a lovely girl, Claudia Christian, who's going to play the female lead. So hopefully, I mean, I've not spoken to Jim for quite some time, but he was going to be story editor, I think.
Right.
And
I should give him a ring then.
well, you should. But the reason I hesitate, because I'm sort of thinking at the same time, because I know he had some writers lined up to do future episodes. So there you go. Right, done my good deed for today.
I did Lucifer Rising with Jim Mortimer, and then I did 3 more Doctor Who books by myself. And I then wrote the 5th Doctor Who book, Bankroll Legacy, with Justin Richards, so going back to writing with somebody else. So what nobody actually knew was that we'd written that book 15 years before when we were at university. And it wasn't a Doctor Who book. It was a Victorian murder mystery, in which corpses come back to life and start massacring people in a large manor house. The BBC, that were doing the Doctor Who books at the time, one of their books fell through, and they had like 2 months to get another book out, and they phoned Justin up and said, can you do a book in a hurry? And he said, well, funnily enough, I've got a book here, we'll just rewrite it. So we actually went through and added the Doctor in everywhere. And then the reviews came out, and the review said, what a masterly use of the Doctor. The characterisation is superb. They haven't read it, have they?
Oh, gosh. We've got to keep... I know what I'll do. Because... No, not now. Later. No, I won't sing. But it's maybe the audience isn't quite large enough, but normally at Q&As, I'm out there with a radio mic, and I get the questions lined up. Otherwise, you have a smashing answer, and then go through, whilst you tell the next person to put their hand up. But I'm not like that, am I? I say, you ask a question. Ask a question, you say, yes, sir.
Easiest question.
Right.
Just get that and put it on the spot.
While they're thinking, how difficult is it with an established series to write and keep the characters within the series style?
I mean, with the Doctor Who?
Yeah, to keep consistent with the rest of the genre, the storyline.
Yeah. I think different people have different problems with it. Some of the Doctor Who writers, they were given the character of the Doctor and the companions, and then they immediately tried to get as far away as they possibly could. They did all the things that you couldn't do on television. They would torture the Doctor, they'd kill off companions, they'd have sex and violence and swearing all over the place. Other people wanted to get as close as they possibly could to the way the BBC did things. Having constraints and having to write characters the way they were on television is actually very useful. It can kind of channel you in particular directions. It means you're not sat there thinking, oh no, what do I do next? It's quite obvious what you do next because the characters do certain things. But the fourth of the Doctor Who books that I did was the first Doctor book with Stephen and Vicky, who are two of the most boring characters ever created. And I just looked at them and thought, what can I possibly do? I want to do a John Pertwee book. He's my favourite Doctor. And I want to do the Katie Manning as the companion. But Virgin said, no, can't do that. We haven't got any first Doctor books. Do one of those. William Hartnell, I can just about cope. But not Stephen and Vicky, please. And I had to give them something, I had to move them beyond the boundaries of what they were doing on television. I had to make them slightly more interesting. So I threw Christopher Marlowe into the mix. It was set in the 16th century. And I had Stephen almost having an affair with Christopher Marlowe. Just to kind of push the boundaries a little bit.
Well, this has always interested me, actually. What would you prefer? Would you prefer to write Doctor Who book, for example, or would you prefer, and I think I've already answered the question, prefer to do something completely original?
I'm in a bit of a quandary. It's a good question. It's a good thing you asked me that. No, I'm in a quandary because with the Doctor Who books and the Babylon 5 books and the Randall Hopkirk books, people come to me and they say, have a contract, have several £1,000, and please write us a book. But with a completely original book, you've got to write it first and then try and sell it.
Can you not maybe write an original book on the back of your success in doing the Doctor Who's?
Yes, well, publishers, I think, would look at the Doctor Who books and say, well, that's not real writing, is it? That doesn't guarantee you can actually sell a real book. So yes, I would love to write a real book. What I want to do is to write a big fantasy novel about Walter Raleigh. Because it's so much research for the 16th century Doctor Who book about Walter Raleigh, and they never actually managed to get him the book in the end. He got referred to, he was meant to be one of the major characters, and the book itself just kept on veering away in other directions. So I've got a whole shelf full of books about Walter Raleigh and nothing to do with them. So yes, Walter Raleigh's the best
I suppose it's 2 or maybe 4 scripts a week come to me, written by lovely, lovely people, a lot of whom attend conventions, and they're all written in the style of Babylon 5 or Star Trek. And some of them are damn good, but I go back, there's one guy, Martin Fisher, I've seen for some time, but I sent it back to him and I said, don't write in this style, write in your own style. So he sent me a script, and he said, nobody will know this one. I've taken it from a Japanese cartoon series. I thought, no, we've got the point.
Missing the point completely. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
How many people actually find books about TV series or films useful? Do you actually go out and buy them? Why? What is it you like about them? What do you want to read?
Sometimes I do a bit more background on TV series. Something just sort of interesting TV series, want to see this sort of interesting off screen, so to speak.
So much role-playing games.
I think a lot of it is
series when you're on the bus.
I think a lot of it is the same reason that I'm addicted to listening to commentaries on films or TV series. You find out so much more about how they made a series or an episode, and it's fascinating to what was going through their mind while they were making it?
I think it turns you from a viewer into a student, really, in a way, doesn't it? I mean,
Yes.
but if you read these, how did they do this book, or how did they do that book? It's almost an education in itself, if you read enough of them.
Yes, but don't go on. This is your time, not mine.
I was thinking, I think audiences these days are much more, want to be much more involved with the process. Back in the old days, you watched a film, you went home and that was it. But people these days, they want to feel like they're part of the whole thing. They want to understand all the background. I think it's very valuable, very useful.
I hate to contradict the gentleman in the chair, but if I have a hobby, it's all the lovely film books from the 50s and the 40s. And they are full of details. How this was done and how, Frankenstein's makeup was done and so on. But I'm sure there is truth in what you say, but I think that maybe it's people are more intelligent is a bad word, but they now want to know exactly what happened, whereas they in the past lived in maybe a fantasy world. These were their idols, up on the screen.
Do you think there's also the fact that people these days want to know the bad stories behind films? They almost want to know the battles and the arguments, and they want to feel that there were problems on set, even when there weren't.
I mean, who's that girl? American actress. She's just been convicted of shoplifting.
Winona Ryder.
Yeah. Interesting. It's the same with all this business with Bible. People want to know why.
People are voyeurs.
Yeah.
And these books contribute towards that.
Yes.
You see what happened in the back office, and what I find is sometimes it makes me appreciate a series or a film more. You get to know the people behind you never see in front of the camera. All those names that whiz past at high speed. You say, oh, that's him. Oh, that's him. Oh, that's what he did. It makes me appreciate a series or a film just a little bit more.
Well, Star Wars is a case in point. There is now a backstory to Ozzel. Going right back to when he was born. He was a shit then. And he clawed his way up, and he, metaphorically knifed people in the back, and his parents were in the military, and he used them to get... And it's interesting, I like it. And maybe that's... When they first came to me and asked me to write Yes, Mr. Bronson, specifically, they didn't want to kiss and tell. They said, we've got enough of these. So I said, well, I wouldn't want to write that anyway, so I said I'd have a go. And people have been very kind. But I think it's the interest in what, as you say, what goes on behind the scenes.
Do you think there's a risk that people aren't actually watching the film or the TV thing as a plot, as a piece of fiction anymore? They're more interested in seeing the mechanics and the scaffolding?
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but does it matter?
I think it does. I had this worry that we're not reading books in the way that the people were reading Dickens, for instance, or Shakespeare. We're more interested in why the writer was doing particular things.
Yeah.
What do people think?
I think you're probably right, because if you take, say, Doctor Who magazine now, and you read a review for a book, they take it apart down to absolute minute levels of psychological motivation.
Yeah.
Whereas when I want to buy a book, basically I just want to know what the character's going to do, and whether it's a good story.
Yes. It's almost impossible to go and see a film these days without actually knowing before you go in what the film's about.
Yeah.
I'm desperately trying to avoid learning anything about the new Bond film. But I can't. Wherever I go, there's reviews of it, there's interviews with the actors, so I know the actor, that Pierce Brosnan had a headache on a particular day, or if a car's skidding across the ice, I know who was driving it and what their wife's name is. You can't watch anything from a position of no knowledge in it, or read a book from a position of no knowledge.
Yeah, because it does take the excitement away when you know that incredible stunt wasn't an incredible stunt, it was CGI, and you didn't really want to know that. You wanted to go, oh wow, that was great, but you now know, oh, that was a spring-loaded thing under there, and when he presses that button, there's a bloke in the corner who's pushing a bit of wood.
The
sometimes I think it's quite impressive to know that the guy that dives off the dam is in fact the guy diving off the dam. It's not CGI at all.
Right. Having read the 2 books about Babylon 5, I've now wrecked Babylon 5 for myself. I can't watch the series. You know, if I turn on, there's an episode on. I know so much about what happened and who the people were and what the arguments behind the scenes and all the stuff that was cut out. It just spoiled the whole thing for me. And even just being a writer, I can't even go see a film without knowing how the plot was constructed. You know, I'm not watching the film. I'm trying to read the mind of the writer who wrote it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I'm thinking, well, I would have done it differently.
But I can become that little boy, or 5 years old or whatever, who used to go. In Aberdeen, there were more cinemas in Aberdeen when I was a wee lad than in any other city in the country. And if you were clever, you could see the first house at 10 o'clock in the morning, another one at 1, another one at 4, and then the evening. So I used to see 4 full programs a day, and that's 8 movies, because there was always a nice little second feature. And I can still be that little boy if I go to watch something. I can say now, oh my God, that was good. I mean, somebody out there was talking about Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner just before we came in. And I was spellbound. I thought it was superb. And I asked him, I won't tell you which of the dealers it was, but I said, what is the connection between Field of Dreams and Star Wars? He said, what? No, I don't think I know that one. You know, don't you?
James Earl Jones.
Of course it is.
Do you not find that when you watch actors on television or films, that you're thinking, oh, if I'd been playing that part, I wouldn't have put that emphasis on that part?
Well, I can, but I can still be that little boy. I can still be that little boy, and I mean, somebody can say, oh God, he was bloody awful in that part. I will judge for myself, and if I liked it, I liked it. I mean, what was it? Oh, Force 10 from Navarone, which was on the box about a week ago. And it was the Radio Times of the paper was really slagging it off and saying, oh, it's not a patch on the original and so on. And Harrison Ford is this, Robert Shaw. Yes, there are stories about it. Poor old Bob was on a bender most of the time. But I think it's a bloody good movie. And I will stand up and say that from any soapbox in the country. Okay. Come on, questions for Sir.
Question.
I have a question.
Go on.
Writing with science fiction and fantasy is actually fairly restrictive in what you can do, especially with programs like Doctor Who. How much would you like to just completely leave fantasy, science fiction and everything else behind and just write a decent book?
Would you like to rephrase the question?
No, I'm tactless.
No, I like science fiction and fantasy. I think you can do things with the genres that you can't do anywhere else. If you're writing a psychological drama or a murder mystery, you're very much locked into people acting the way that people do, wearing real clothes, driving real cars. With science fiction and fantasy, you can go anywhere and do anything, but answer some very important questions about human nature still. So, no, I think it's very valuable, and I love the genre, and I still want to keep on working in it.
Shall I tell you, can you see us, Mr.
I can indeed.
Right. I think it's lovely the way you're talking to that bloody thing. Oh,
Not
dear.
things you know.
It's a bit like acting with the Muppets, I suspect.
Yes, poets. Yeah. Or with any, just with a blue screen. God, dear. Sorry.
No, we're going to finish your blue screen story.
No. I'm saving mine for tomorrow.
Okay, I'll catch it. We're talking about limits in science fiction and fantasy. I haven't personally seen Space Island 1, very near Gracie Grant Island. Okay, you know. What sort of, how much sort of input is, emphasis is there on getting the science part of it right?
Because it was set very close to the current time, they did actually have a scientific advisor who wasn't the Doctor, strangely enough. But he was a practicing astronomer and physicist, and he would read all of the scripts. But he was, I think he was about 65 or 70 or something, and very crusty and eccentric. And we used to get notes on the scripts that went in the most phenomenal detail and would criticise us for the slightest thing that we did wrong. Most of you probably wouldn't have seen the series, but they had these little, you know, like in Red Dwarf, they had little scutters that go around. Well, they had similar things in Space Island 1, these little robots that would go around the space station repairing things. And in one of the scripts, they went mad and they started attacking people with laser beams. And this scientific advisor was writing pages and pages of notes saying that you wouldn't have laser beams on these things, it's ludicrous. And he just went mad. I think they had to get rid of him in the end.
I was going to say this earlier on, but now I've got more courage or something. But I was led to understand that one of the reasons that the series failed, is that a wrong, bad word to use?
No, I think it's fair.
Is because not enough money was spent.
Yes.
Yeah. You would agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
The trouble is that people, you see science fiction as a label on something and you think it's got to have big special effects and, you know, blue screen and spacecraft and everything. Whereas you can do science fiction with two people in a room.
Oh yeah.
If they're asking important questions about the nature of reality or something. And that's what the series was trying to do. It was trying to be 2 or 3 people in a room talking about important scientific issues. And for that reason, I think people just switched off. They wanted the laser beams and the aliens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I would say one thing about Space Island 1. I only got the job on it mainly through bluff. The script editor, the guy who created the series and wrote the first 7 or 8 scripts, and was a script editor as well, more or less had a nervous breakdown halfway through the making of it. And he just had to go on holiday for several weeks. And a guy called Adrian Rigelsford, somehow bluffed his way into the production office and sat in the script editor's office and told people he was the new script editor. And people believed him. Because it was I think people didn't quite know, it was a new company, nobody really knew anybody else. And after a couple of days, people thought he was the script editor. And he started commissioning scripts. And he phoned up a chap called Gary Russell.
Oh, right.
He phoned up me. He phoned up Nigel Neal. He phoned up PJ Hammond. And he commissioned scripts from all of us. And we started writing on the assumption that he was doing the right job. And we got the scripts in, and then somebody found out he wasn't the script editor, and they got rid of him. By then we'd done our scripts. And actually, because they were running short scripts and our scripts were okay, they used them. It was just through a sheer phenomenal fluke that we managed to get on television. I admire him for that.
What, you mean the gall to go in there?
The gall to go in there,
Yeah.
just bluff your way through everything.
Yeah.
And he did write a couple of scripts for them, I think were very good scripts as well.
Gary Russell.
Anything else? Any questions?
When you write books as a spin-offs based on TV series, do you get a lot of people coming back to you, angry fans coming back and saying, but that person would never have done it that way, or that account you've given of their past and their information is completely wrong?
Not as much as you think, funnily enough. I think Doctor Who fans in particular are very forgiving about that kind of thing. And because they came up through fandom, you know, I understand the attitude, and I wouldn't do anything that people would criticise too much. I think if I was probably working Star Wars fiction or Star Trek fiction, it would be a different thing. I think the fans there get very, very picky about particular plot points.
Yeah, Star Trek in particular. Love them to
I
death.
certainly have the feeling, I've read a lot of Star Wars books, the feeling occasionally, not, that's not the way I feel it would have happened.
Yes.
There was a time when George vetted every single book.
You mean he doesn't now?
No.
It's fairly obvious there's
Shattered.
a consistency between authors.
No, but either he's got so much money he doesn't need to bother, or he hasn't got the time. I suspect the latter, because he does like to hold the reins very tight.
Speaking of somebody who has used other people's characters, characters played by actors, I've got to ask you, do you feel possessive about Oswald at all? Do you see, if he appears in a book, do you read it and think, oh, I don't like that, I wouldn't have acted in that?
Possessive, yes, but not to that extent. I'm a bum actor, me, and go from one job to another. I mean, everybody knows, so I can tell this little story my agent rang up and said, you've got a gap of a month between these two jobs. And they're making a sequel to that film that was quite successful, made a couple of years ago, called Star Something or Other. I promise you, those were the words. And I've read the script. It's not much of a part, but there is a rather good death. So that's how I came to play him. And I love it. You know, I mean, dash it all. Nobody knew what was going to happen in Star Wars. But I suppose it's fair to say I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Star Wars. And I certainly wouldn't have gone all over the world if it weren't for Star Wars. So yeah, please, and everybody, bless them, remembers dear old Oswald, which is, I mean, I get some lovely
Probably
names.
for the death scene.
Well, yes, and maybe because I'm very proud of the fact that I did it in one take, and I'm always asked what was it like to be throttled by Vader, and I say, I don't know, he wasn't anywhere near the studio when they did my reverse. The mystiques of filmmaking.
I was reading an obituary for Michael Elphick, died recently, of course, and the obituary said that, of course, he was killed in Star Wars. He wasn't in Star Wars.
No, he wasn't in Star Wars.
And there was a big argument in the newspaper for a couple of weeks about who it was that was killed in Star Wars. And your name was mentioned, Don Henderson's name was mentioned.
Yeah, yes. I'm afraid they're dropping off the casters.
I read an interview with Peter Mayhew recently, who plays Chewbacca, played Chewbacca.
My uncle is Uncle Peter.
Really?
No.
Everybody's uncle to him.
And he was saying he got very annoyed because they killed off Chewbacca in the Star Wars books. And he does feel very possessive about it. He wished they hadn't done that.
Well, yeah. I do a lot of conventions with Peter, and it's his only part, bless him, you know. And so I think maybe you do feel very possessive. Mind you, Jeremy feels very possessive about his part.
Jeremy Bullock.
Yeah, he's my father as well.
Would it be tough for him to play the character in the new films?
Yes.
Walking around on his knees, wearing
Yeah.
wig.
I don't know how old will Boba Fett be in the next one?
Sure. That's another 7, 8 years ago.
So is it? Yeah.
Because there was a 10-year gap between.
Because Darth Vader's grown up, and dear old Dave, who's just had yet another operation, is very, very desperately keen to play Prince of York. Let me go on. 69. Dear idea. Questions for Sir, please. The other thing I do, you see, I go all the way around the room if it's a smallish audience. Say everybody must ask a question. So what about the young lady leaning against the pillar at the back there? Come up with a question.
I haven't got a question exactly, but I was just thinking yesterday, is that blind dead people's on television? Is it? Lunkheads. My own daughter is visually impaired, and I've never thought the things that he was saying, you know, like when you, if we're looking or reading something, we get one impression, and their impression is completely different. This goes back to a few years. We're watching a child's film, and obviously when we're in the cinema, I'm translating to her what's happening in the fight scenes. And it was quite embarrassing because it was what was it? The borrowers, and somebody fell in some poo, and I said it, and I felt absolutely terrible afterwards. He's just fell in it, and I said the word, you know, and of course it trade what was going on, and it's like reading a book. She prefers 10 times to read the book.
Well, then seeing it on the screen.
Yes, because she's got no visual idea what's going on unless, well, what we, as we would see it. You know, I mean, you could see it one way, I would probably see it a different way. She's gone to several of the same film twice, and I'd say one thing about a particular character. Someone else would take her and say, they look like this, and it's interesting, you know, because she's just managed to get hold of Harry Potter because it's a very difficult one to get hold of because for all of England, you only have one copy of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
You know, and
So is she able to read?
Braille.
Ah,
So,
right.
so you can only have.
Because I do quite a lot of books for the blind.
Yeah, you see, she likes reading. She likes to use her imagination.
This is why, and I defer to the author here. I mean, I scribbled 3 little books which have been selling like hotcakes, but that's another story. But this is why, would you not agree, that I don't think the book will ever die, because people love to read and use their imaginations.
And I think what you've hit on there is the key difference between a good writer and a hack writer. I'm not saying which side of the line I fall, but a good writer can find ways of describing things which hopefully nobody's thought of before, or finds ways of looking at things that haven't occurred to anyone, whereas a hack writer will always use the same old descriptions again and again. I'll give you an example. A few years back, as part of my real job as opposed to the writing, I met the British woman who went up into space, Helen Sharman. And we got talking about what it was actually like to be in space. And I said, well, what was the most unusual thing, the most bizarre thing that happened to you? And she thought for a minute and she said, it was actually being able to float in your spacesuit without touching any of the edges or the sides. I thought that was incredible. It never occurred to me that would be something that would lodge in her mind. You could float in the spacesuit and not touch it. So I've got to get that into a book now, because nobody else has ever got that into a book. And I think as a writer, you keep on looking for those things, one after the other.
We just oversized spaces.
Well, true, yes.
Because if you listen to when he was talking on telly, I mean, the way he was explaining how you see the world, you know, you hear the things. We don't hear or see as they see. You know, I know they can't see it, but what they hear is completely different to what we sort of. She would probably say, well, that was going on over there, that was going on over there, that was going on over there. We just listen to the conversation between 2 people, you know, and her imagination of what's going on in our own world is completely different.
It is.
And when you get a book, and she reads it, and she says to me, well, that is that, you know, that writer is good because they bring out everything. You know, you can, you know, as far as everybody's imagination.
Well, Stephen King wrote a couple of books from the point of view of a 70-year-old character, and that was the first real time that I'd read a book and managed to put myself into the mind of somebody who was quite elderly. And it's a different way of thinking, it's a different way of looking at things. And, he did an immensely good job of doing that, but most books you read, you put yourself into the mind of the character and it's you. You're just reacting the way that you would. And the skill of a really good author is to give you a different perspective on things.
Well, another thing is, if you listen to radio, you know, plays on radio, they've got the same thing, where you've got to imagine the character. You know, when you think about actors playing the part, and when you actually see the actual person, it's not what you actually imagine the person to be. You know, it's completely opposite. You know?
Back to Jeremy Bullock playing Boba Fett in The Empire Strikes Back. He could never have taken his helmet off, because Jeremy Bullock, he's just like a sweet man. He looks like a bank clerk.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's very rare that I read a book, then see the film or the TV series, and it does it justice.
Does it? Is it
I
not true
enjoy
to say it? You
Well,
read the book, it does it justice as far as you are.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's because when you read a book, it's in your head, and it's so much more. There's that gap when watching television or a cinema. There's that big gap, and having it in your head makes it real to you.
I think this goes back to what we were saying earlier on about has fiction been ruined for us by the obsessive analysis that we do, and also by watching film. Can anybody read a Harry Potter book now without seeing the kid from the films in the films?
I don't know. I haven't read them since.
No, I haven't read them either.
With the book and the film it only takes 2 seconds, whereas in the book you've got a lot of description.
Yes.
Now, it takes a lot to describe a scene, whereas in the, say, film or television, it's about 2 seconds or 2 minutes, whereas the whole thing takes ages to actually describe it in words.
Yeah.
This is another problem, because sometimes some are very scenic, and some are just sort of conversation, so some are easier to translate onto the screen.
And also they do mean different things to different people.
Yeah, well,
I had it's my own publisher actually. He said, oh, we've got a new website. go and have a look at it. So I went.
And you said, what a website?
But I went to biography, autobiography, and it wasn't there. So I got back to him, he said, yes, but it's under humour, because it's so joyous and funny, and it can't all be true. I said, it bloody is. Put it under autobiography.
Put it on a tragedy.
Yeah. Dear.
Any more questions?
Yes.
The gentleman back, sorry.
How do you adjust between your normal 9 to 5 or whatever your job and your author?
Oh, if I could actually make a full-time living being an author, I would. It's useful in a way. I can do the job from 9 to 5, I can come home and then I can do something completely different in the evenings, it's like kind of left brain, right brain activity. And in a way, it's what keeps me sane, is being able to do the writing. And it's nice to have a hobby that actually pays bills and gets me on holidays and things. So, yeah, I mean, if I wasn't doing the work 9 to 5, I would probably write about as much as I do at the moment anyway. That's one of the tragedies of it. On occasions where I've taken several weeks off work to actually do some writing, I do about the same number of hours writing per day as I do at the moment anyway. So, yeah, it's hard, but if I wasn't doing the writing, I'd be rebuilding cars or doing another hobby or something. So
your wife wouldn't see you anyway?
Yes, sir.
Yes. You mentioned Lucifer Rising, you mentioned the Empire Collapse, and you mentioned the Banquet at Embassy. Could you just remind me what the two were again?
Can I remember? Oh yeah, the second Doctor I did was All Consuming Fire, which was the Sherlock Holmes Dr. Watson one, which was set in Victorian London. That was great because I've always wanted to write a Sherlock Holmes one, and I can't wait to do it. Brilliant. And then what's the next one? Original Sin was the third one.
Well, I was going to ask about both of them. I just wanted to make sure you didn't write them. How did you get on with All Consuming Fire? I mean, given the legal part of it and characterisation. For example, I mean, I noticed in that one you did very well with some of your diaries and Watson's diaries. But what sort of sparked it off, and how did you get on with it?
Well, as I said, I always wanted to write a Sherlock Holmes novel because I've read them ever since I was a kid, and the style that Conan Doyle uses in those books is very distinctive. And it was almost like an intellectual exercise to try and write a book in the style of John Watson. So I had great fun doing that. The legal side was okay because the copyright laws, Sherlock Holmes was in copyright for 50 years after Conan Doyle's death, and then it lapsed from copyright. And then they changed the laws to extend the 50 years to 70 years. There was a period of a few years when it was out of copyright before it came back in, and that's when I wrote the book. So fortunately I was okay. Yeah, writing in different styles is an interesting exercise. It's difficult to explain how you do it. Partly it's choice of words, but partly you've got to try not to go too far into absolute pastiche. I've read too many detective novels where somebody's been trying to write in the style of Raymond Chandler, but it's gone just far too far, and it's become almost like a parody in itself. So you've got to try and pull yourself back quite a bit.
There's a friend of mine, actually, a writer, M.J. Troe, going back. Do you know?
Oh, Lestrade books.
Yeah. He's taken Lestrade, I don't know how you pronounce it. And he has now become the hero. And Holmes and Watson are just minor characters. It's a clever little twist.
It's a bit like George MacDonald Fraser doing The Flashman.
Yeah.
Just taking a minor character
That's
from
right.
around school days.
Something else has taken has done books using Minecraft codes as the
Really?
Yes.
My goodness,
There's also a couple of books with Mrs. Hudson as the detective. And she has a lodger that solves crimes as well.
We won't even go into the Mrs. Columbo series.
Oh, dear old Conan Doyle, he did rather well.
Have you done Sherlock Holmes?
Oh, yes.
What haven't you done?
I did Sherlock Holmes in Warsaw. Promise you. And they built Baker Street on the back lot of the Warsaw studios. And whereas here we'd use rubber cobbles, not out there, they were real cobbles. And I had to fall out of the back of a hansom cab and got it there. That's a long forgotten series. with Jeffrey Whitehead as Sherlock Holmes. I was at Ryder with him actually. And who was it? Donald Pickering as Watson, and Paddy Newell was the straight.
Do they still exist?
Who?
No,
sorry. No, I mean, Donald and Paddy are long last no longer with it. I've no idea. I mean, it was, the producer was a guy called Sheldon Wells from America, who was a bit of a fly boy, I think. So presumably they do somewhere. But I didn't think there was even a show together, I'm not sure. But it was quite clever. You used to go out, do 2 episodes back to back, and then when you weren't on the set, you were revoicing the Polish actors they brought in to play the odd little bits. Bizarre. Bizarre. Why don't you go for someone at the back on our right, your left? We've had no questions from that neck of the woods at all.
Dr. Bob?
No? None? Go on then.
Do you find more interesting writing, commentary or original fiction?
It's got to be original fiction. We're writing the commentary stuff on the TV series and the films. It's a labour-intensive job. You've got to sit down and watch every single episode of Battle 5 several times to write the book. Watch every James Bond film in infinite detail. But no, it's the creative side of things that I enjoy and really want to do. It's writing fiction.
Do you occasionally find yourself watching a Bond film to learn all the details and suddenly realise you've gone half an hour and you've just been enjoying the film and you have to rewind it and go through it again?
That does happen, yes. The reverse happens as well. I'll be watching something like Midsummer Murders and find myself making notes on actors in the background, things that scientists say. No, I'm not writing this book.
Sort of coming back to behind the scenes books, I'm not really too keen on reading about some of the personality clashes or unpleasantness on set, but sometimes it is interesting to know why series do the things they do, why the sort of change in tone or quality or direction the series at different points. I think Xenowarrior Princess, a favourite of mine, 5th season sort of seemed to veer off a bit. Sort of kind of find out a little bit about why that happened and a little bit about some personality involved in that.
Yes.
It's quite often just a change of script editor.
I think that was largely the factor involved.
Yeah.
And sort of also some of the other key people getting involved in other series or
The new groom always likes to sweep clean and make his mark. I've seen that happen a lot. On Grange Hill it was extraordinary. Yeah, we were talking about being sort of passionate about the part. With Bronson, which is the longest part I've played, 5 seasons, I did become quite protective of him. I said no, he would never hit a child. No, he won't do this. And most of the time, which was another lovely reason for playing the part, I got my way. It was, I mean, the bow tie was mine, and the suit was mine, and so on and so forth. And I always signed the, yes, Mr. Bronson, now pay attention. And that was mine. But yes, I did. I became protective of the dear man, which, when a little girl passed, on the way here, was crossing the concourse of the station, this little looked up and said, "Hello, Mr. Bronson," and walked on. Oh, gosh.
Talking of protective characters, in Original Sin, 2 new characters were turned up. How much of their creation was just down to you?
The 2 new companions who got picked up as the Doctor's companions. In the end, that was all down to me, but we really went round the houses on that, because Virgin had said, right, we want to introduce a new companion into the TARDIS, to give the Doctor somebody else to travel with. Come up with an idea. They got a lot of the writers together, and we got very, very drunk in a pub somewhere, and come up with various ideas. And I said, why not give the Doctor an older companion, an old 70-year-old man, who can treat the Doctor like a son? Because usually the Doctor being like a father to the people in the TARDIS. So why not replace the whole thing with somebody elderly? Why not make him like an old tramp? I'd just seen Robert Stevens in King Lear.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, this big, enormous, overbearing character in this old kind of tatty coat covered with dirt and grime. He's a tramp that the Doctor's picked up. And he'll just, also a bit like, brain's gone completely back. Comedy series, Andy Davis, City University.
History Man, was it?
Sorry?
The History Man?
No. Very Peculiar Practice.
Oh, yeah.
Who's the Scottish actor who played Jock?
Gosh, it's...
Anyway, you know the person, don't you?
Yeah.
I wanted somebody like that as well. Somebody who's a little bit cracked, a little bit, or could come up with bizarre statements every now and then. But somewhere there was a glimmer of real intelligence. And Virgin said, brilliant, that's a great idea, run with that. So I wrote 30,000 words of the book, and the more I wrote, the worse it got. I thought, this just isn't working. This really isn't working. And I sent the stuff to Virgin and said, look, I'm not sure quite if this is what you want. And they read it and they said, no, you're right, that's terrible. So I had to go back and we stripped that character out, and I replaced him with two cops, sort of futuristic cops, based very much, or partly based on Han Solo and Chewbacca, funnily enough. It was you had the smart, sassy one, and the big one, who didn't say very much, and it was quite naive. And it really was, it was like replacing something original with a cliche, but in that instance the cliche worked, because it was tapping into a whole set of things that people already knew about. And also, it was about the time that, there was a cop series on at the time with a guy called Sipowicz. It was trying to tap into that kind of New York streetwise character as well, so they got all of that in there. And it just seemed to work. The book really took off with those characters in. So in the end, we got to where Virgin wanted to be. And then other writers started using those companions in the TARDIS. And I found I couldn't read their books because I invested so much time and effort, and it's going to be possessive about what you've created. I put so much time and effort into creating those characters, and I loved them so much. And to watch somebody else take them off and torture them, I can't do that. I can't watch it happen. So I didn't read any of the books after that.
It's interesting, actually, talking about tramps and so on. Has anybody ever seen, what the heck was it called? It was Andrew Beach who made a Doctor Who episode. Downtime or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Talking of tramps, that was Jeffrey Beavers, wasn't it? As a tramp in that one.
Jeffrey, and because the auntie said, you shall not use Doctor Who. So they had this guy, played by Jeffrey Beavers, as you say, who was a tramp and was sort of the Doctor. It was quite interesting, but again, not enough money was spent on it.
Yes.
Downtime, that's it.
I have
No.
a tactical question.
Oh gosh, here we go.
One of you has written Doctor Who, one of you has appeared in Doctor Who. Next year is the 40th anniversary and there is still no televisual Doctor Who. Where would you take the show?
Right, I shall answer first. I will fairly confidently predict that there will never be another television Doctor Who. There was talk, did you know this, sir, that I was going to play the Doctor?
I had read that rumour.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good choice.
So do I, yes, it'd be great. I was going to go round the country to the Who conventions and get some input from the audience as to how I should play the character. Anyway, it may happen, but I don't think it will. I think that we're back to Mr. Russell again. I think Big Finish, which has afforded me the opportunity of keeping up my very proud record of having worked with more Doctors than any other actor. I've done several of the audios, but I can't see it going any further apart from the books.
Yeah. I think the great feature of Doctor Who that made it a success was its eccentric Britishness. We which you could get away with in the 60s and the 70s. It didn't matter that it was reasonably cheap and the sets wobbled. It had a style of its own, something that the Avengers had a style of its own. But I don't think you can do that in the 21st century. I think people are expecting the big special effects. And style doesn't really get you very far. And the big screen version of the Avengers that was done a few years back failed dismally.
Well, so did the Doctor Who one.
As did the Doctor Who one, because you can't do it the way it was, and I don't think it would work in the new glossy Star Wars style of the future. I think the day of Doctor Who is gone.
Occasionally you find that the BBC will do these great dramas with the science fiction edge, and they're fine for a short time. But I think if you're going to make a series, it's doable, I think, still, if you get the right people, and you just get the right feel. That's so hard to get it right first time.
So much speculation. I mean, who would be? If they wanted to use Syl, they couldn't, because he's dead, isn't he?
That'd be what you mean.
No, Sylvester McCoy. His
He's
doctor.
not dead.
He's not there.
He's still alive.
Isn't he?
I was working with him in August.
I didn't mean the actor. Shut up, will you?
Oh, the character,
The
yeah.
character.
But only if
Of course, I've done a convention with him recently. He's a lovely guy. So.
Mike, but only if you work with the American film. There's rumours still going around that BBC are going to do a new series, and they're going to ignore that one completely because it failed. It wasn't very good.
Well, it's remarkable how popular Doctor Who is in America. Because I do a lot of conventions over there, and we do a Q&A. And, 50%, if not more, of the questions are about Doctor Who. So there is a market out there, but I don't think it's going to be tapped.
While we're on this, why don't we see who would you like to play the Doctor?
I've got a list. I'd like an actor who's done quite a lot, Ian Richardson, going for an older type Doctor again. And there's an actor who you wouldn't really think of because he's done usually plays police officers. A chap called Reese Fitzgerald. I don't know if you've heard of him. He played an inspector on ITV. He's usually a policeman, but I've seen him on a couple of other things, and he's quite versatile, and you need the versatility.
What I mean, come on. You might as well just say me.
Oh yes,
Thank you very much.
Would you like to play the Doctor?
Me?
Yes.
I'd love to, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. But I wouldn't play him, as some people have suggested, like Mr. Bronson. We've got to veer away from that. We shall see. We shall see.
I think one of the great things that's come out of the Virgin Doctor Who books line is that people like Gary Russell and myself and Paul Cornell and so on have turned from fans into being writers. And some of us, not me, but people like Gareth Roberts and League of Gentlemen, Mark Gatiss, have become TV people in their own right. They now have the power, in a sense, to go to the BBC and say, well, we've done the League of Gentlemen, we're Doctor Who fans. Can we actually have a go at the series?
Yeah.
Mark Gatiss would kill himself, or kill someone else to have the chance to play the Doctor.
I think it has been done, and I'm sure it's been done. And Auntie has repeatedly said, no, we don't think it's viable. Did you know, this is going back a few years now, a very good friend of mine called Peter Greenway, who wrote quite a few, and directed quite a few Doctor Who's. But it has been, when was the first Doctor? You should know, well you probably do as well. Forget about him. When was the first Doctor Who transmitted? Think carefully.
November 23rd, 1963.
On 17 p.m.
The assassination of Kennedy
That's
was actually a plot to stop Doctor Who being watched.
Yes.
In my opinion.
And they repeated the first episode the following week, so that wouldn't happen.
They wouldn't do it now, though, would they?
Oh, I don't know. They love repeats to the BBC. It doesn't cost them any money. It costs them a couple of bob. Far cheaper than making another programme. Would you like to write for it?
I would. I would love to.
Why don't you write a Doctor Who script and submit it?
For the same reason that you said earlier on that you get all these scripts and people writing in the style of someone else. Why not develop your own style? Maybe this is a question we should throw over to the audience. What would you prefer? Go back and get more Doctor Who, or something completely new and original? There's a comfort factor in going back to the original stuff, I think, and people like that. From the writer's point of view, sometimes it's just nice to break the tradition, do something completely original, create your own characters, create your own style. Yes.
The problem with Doctor Who is we saw what happened when they tried to do something new and different with it. With the American one. It just didn't work for the fans. The people who were most interested in watching that
Actually,
weren't into something new. They wanted their Doctor who they grew up with.
I tell you what I would, just to answer the question, what I would do if I'm given the chance to bring Doctor Who back is to go back and remake some of the best of the older stories with a new Doctor. I'd go back and do Spearhead from Space, the first John Pertwee story, again, but for the 21st century. I'd go back and do Evil of the Daleks again. I'd go back and do Tomb of the Cybermen again.
Which is the one, oh my God, the one that takes place in on the underground, the
Yeti.
The what? Web of Fear. Now, a chum of mine has done a stage version of that.
Oh, yes.
And he put it on in Portsmouth. And there's one bit where there's this character comes onto a monitor screen, which I did for him. And the BBC gave permission for this to be done. And clever guy, he has gone back to them and he said, look, I would like to put this on video because it's a lost episode, I believe. Don't think it exists anymore. And he said, look, if I make it, if you allow me to make it, I will donate a percentage of the profits to children in need. That really put the BBC in a cleft stick. He is awaiting their answer.
We've got about 5 minutes left, so...
Does it time to fly?
Possibly I'm one of only a tiny number of people in the room that hasn't actually read any of your work. As I walk out this door, which book should I pick up first?
The first one you come across.
Which one comes across? Okay.
It depends. Are you Babylon 5 fan?
No, no.
I can recommend the Babylon 5 books because they're about the only honest book about Babylon 5. Yeah. Or there's the new version of the James Bond book that I did, which has just come out, which covers the new film and all the computer games and everything. So, yeah, one of those two would be good. I can't, in all honesty, recommend the Austin Powers book that I did.
Okay. So we're getting close to wind up. Future projects. What's coming up?
Nothing at the moment. It's all gone quiet, so I might have to write that best-selling novel.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Writing on spec, I should imagine, because I happily never had to do it, although I've got my 3 books. And the 4th one, half done. But, as I understand it, and I imagine you've got to sort of push the boat yourself sometimes, and find a marvellous character. Like my Trove with his Australia. I think brilliant idea. They're selling around hot cakes.
I think what I would like to do is take a bit of time out and write an original TV script. And just try and shop that around. See if I can get a little bit of that.
Forgive me, I don't know, but do you have an agent?
I do. Talk about it later.
Yeah, no. All I meant was, give it to the agent and say, farm this out.
But it used to be, back in the 70s, you could write a script for something like Doctor Who and send it round to other TV shows and they say, okay, we can see you can do with characters, we'll take a chance and we'll give you a job on Casualty or Z Cars or whatever else. I was talking to my agent about this. He said that these days you can't use a script from one show to get a job on another one. You've got to write something completely original. So even though I've done...
Is that recent?
Past couple of years.
Because I did, you remember Maddie Goring played prosecutor. Oh God, what was the series called? You know the one I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I did a script for him. No, I didn't write it. I did a script, I did a story which had been rejected by Granada for Crown Court. And it turned up at The Expert, that's the series. But it can't happen now.
No. So, yes, I'm going to have to write an original one. If only to try and get myself a job in casualty.
Enough time for one last good question.
One last. How do you pronounce Chris's surname?
This is one of the Doctor Who companions that I created.
Oh, right.
It's spelled C-W-E-J. I called him that because I used to know a girl who had that surname. It's a Polish surname. And she pronounced it Chevet. But everyone called her Quedge. So she just gave up in the end and changed her name to Quedge. So that's how it's pronounced in the books.
I think that's, unless you've got anything else to say.
No, they're not doing
Plug
issues.
anything, plug any more books. Don't forget, there must be books out there somewhere.
Yes, I've given 4 or 5 copies of the James Bond book to the auction, so they should go out sometime. But yeah, thank you to everyone for coming along and asking questions.